Hello, everyone, and welcome to this particular webinar. I'm very excited today because we have joining us from Red Hat is Ian Hood, who's the Chief Strategist. Ian, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Ray. Always good to get together with you and talk about technology and business.
Yeah, what I wanted to do for this is last year I did a whole thing on monetization, but I want to have a discussion and touch on a few topics. And I think one of the things is to set the stage, Ian, is I need to talk about the macro climate of where we are, where if we look at the beginning of the year, almost Ian, every category was up. We saw IT spending projected to be up about 5.4%. We saw CapEx from a wireline perspective about 4%, wireless CapEx about 9.4. But then even from a macro point of view, GDP was projected to be up about 4.1%. But now when we look at mid-year, we see some adjustments. We see a lot of GDP being downgraded about 31% to about 2.9. So what that's doing is it's taking the time for a lot of service providers to revisit on how to optimize and look at the profitability and how do they build a more efficient and simpler network. And I think with that being said, when we talk about 5G, there's a lot of discussion in related to this whole RAN space. And one of the things is that if we look at RAN space, right, traditionally, right, is the least vendor diverse segment, correct me if I'm wrong, that's currently in the market. But Open RAN is kind of changing the game in that area. What are your thoughts and where are we with that in the whole part for RAN and Open RAN?
Yeah, so some really good points on sort of the headwinds we're facing now on the macroeconomic side, and what that's doing to people making decisions about where they're going to go spend their money. And as we did in the core, we're trying to disaggregate the RAN, and as a result, get to more vendors to choose from to change, kind of the procurement approach. But it's still a very challenging space, and sort of the Open RAN, I'll call it movement, if you will, is
Mm-hmm.
really starting to make some progress. And we're sort of standardizing the front haul, and getting multi-vendor deployments out there in the marketplace. And there are additional vendors that are participating beyond kind of the traditional, top 4 or 5. And the other thing we're seeing is that we're getting to the deployments of the virtualized container-based trials. And we're going to see really a huge kind of upswing, if you will, in kind of the Open RAN in 2023. But that's still going to be
Mm-hmm.
balanced against what I call classical RAN, with the traditional vendors. And a lot of the Open RAN pieces will be almost like a greenfield adjacency to go after certain markets, certain frequency spectrums, rather than attempting to actually convert the existing deployments, because that really doesn't drive the economics. Last but not least, the key thing that's going to drive this is we've got to make sure that performance, synchronization, power efficiency are all being delivered through various optimized software on cloud native platforms.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I mean, I think that's one of the points when we're talking about the macro headwinds is that a lot of the service providers need to find a more efficient way to be able to deliver those packets and their services. And I think Open RAN has opportunities providing in is that you can operationalize it, right, and be able to make sure you control the operations of the multi-vendor environment with that. So. Yeah, good area. Now, if we look at another area that I see, it's a hot topic. And now I'm a no router guy, Ian, right? When I hear the word network slicing, right, in my mind initially go, wait, I was doing slicing with VRF on MPLS back in the days, right? But there's this whole topic now related to network slicing in the mobile space. Is this real or just another vendor locking thing with Rick and all that? What is your mindset on
Well, kind of like you, I come from the wide area side as well, and I
that?
think of slicing as just another flavor of QoS. This time in the RAN. In fact, I was
Right.
reading a network architect's guide to 5G yesterday, and going through all the different technologies, that we're going to have to actually connect across the wide area network to this mobile network to actually get slicing to go horizontally. So that's got some challenges in it. But if we go look at what slicing can do for us, it can actually provide some differential, SLAs, some innovative services. We've actually already seen some POCs in this category on improving spectral efficiency, and going after it for massive MIMO. that improves that by a factor of 2, and also some real-time location sensing services. And these are the XApps, if you will, that sit on top of the radio interface controller. Now, this is still a challenge because these capabilities need to be delivered through open interfaces, open APIs, and in any part of the technology that we've worked on over time, we find that yes, we have a standard, but people like to add value to that, which kind of forks it off the edges. So I am still a bit concerned that we're not going to have that openness, but we're going to keep pushing to get more vendors to be able to deliver these applications that network slicing and those innovative services on top of the mobile network. Because if we don't actually solve for that problem, then some of these innovative edge services we want to deliver, sort of VR, AR, new healthcare things, those can't be delivered on top of this architecture. So we got to solve for that and kind of push the industry forward to ensure we don't get that lock in.
Yeah, so it's headed in at least the right direction from your point of view, which is good there, right? So, yeah, and I'm glad to hear that I wasn't just way off when I first compared it to VRF in the routing days there. Now, if we look at, let's say, 5G and 5G Edge specifically, where's the growth in that? Where do you think the opportunity is?
Yeah, so in this one, I think we're seeing that the growth is coming at it from a couple of different ways, and there's a number of examples here that I find really exciting. So one of the areas that most of this is going to be sort of in the heavy industry side of things is where we're going to see a lot of that growth, be it in manufacturing, automotive, energy utilities. That's kind of the sort of the big one. But there are some opportunities in things like logistics, things like healthcare, to get improved healthcare and improved, if you will, broadcast video services for education services. So it's really quite a broad collection of things where we're going to see the growth come from. And now it's just a matter of how do we actually go and enable the architecture so that we can actually improve this by combining edge compute with artificial intelligence, and machine learning techniques that you're seeing in sort of gas exploration. As we start to build this, the EV highway, the grid for all of our electric cars, how's that going to evolve? So there's another opportunity there. And as I say, my preference where I tend to see some great work being done is in the healthcare space, right? For data-driven diagnosis, for lung scans, diagnostic surveillance, and improving, how we fight disease and outbreaks. So that's kind of some of the exciting ones that I see.
Yeah, and I think with post pandemic, some of those requirements are being accelerated to deliver more efficient services for the healthcare area. And that now, any color on any specific region stand out over others that are being more aggressive, or from that point of view? I know you mentioned the industry, but what about regions? Any regional breakout?
So what I find here is that each of the regions has kind of the like we have in almost anything from a emerging technology space, that
Right.
we have leaders in each region that kind of drive certain sectors. Because we've got some very interesting things going on in Japan with some smart retail, for contactless transactions, digital tourism. But we're seeing that kind of same thing in smart cities in Europe as well as an option. So I'd say that it's actually pervasive across all industries, and there's sort of some leaders in each region, and then there's followers in each region. So I can't really kind of give the nod to one region versus the next. They're all kind of driving based on kind of the I call it background of the operator in terms of where their skill set and their customer base is, as to how fast they're driving it. And as I say, this is quite a strong play, because if I moved back to North America, I've got a number of key things happening in factories and in energy as well. So it's really kind of a broad set of capabilities. And we're going to start to see the other regions, as in Middle East, Africa, and Latin America, they'll be followers to the other three.
Yeah. I guess some of them are going to see how effective in that, because I think you're right. It's driven by, what is the outcome and what challenge you're trying to solve in each of those regions there. Now, when we continue to talk about 5G, right? Initially, it was a whole motivation to have better download, better experience, right? from the consumer side, but there's been a large investment required to get 5G deployed. And what you see is a lot of service providers are looking to offset that cost by looking at other sectors, let's say whether they call it enterprise 5G or private 5G. What do you feel is the consumption model or the delivery model for private 5G right now?
Well, that's a really good question because I think the challenge for the operator in this category is that this is really the evolution of managed services, right?
Mhm.
Business services from a connectivity perspective to take things beyond those capabilities and deliver innovative services on top. And so that approach means there's going to be sort of multiple ways that this can be delivered. And what we're seeing is a huge kind of set of competition between the major players. The systems integrators are going to go and deliver this directly to the end enterprise customer as a private solution. You're going to have the telcos are going to attempt to deliver that potentially as a managed service, either on their own prem or on the premise of the enterprise itself. But
Mhm.
we've also got some new players that decided to show up to the party, our friendly hyperscalers. So
Yeah,
they're
right, right.
going to try and take their edge capabilities, that they have, and deliver that as a partially managed service in the industry as well. So we're starting to seeing that even in the networking portion that they're coming at that. So we've got sort of three ways to kind of go do it. One of the ways I also see that this is going to be sort of consumed is that in order to make it easier for the delivery, is the people who make the computers, the OEMs, they're going to package it up and deliver it as a package, with their hardware, cloud native software, from Red Hat already embedded and various networking technology as a base solution that then can be delivered. And we're seeing that in partnerships in actually in Middle East Africa and as well here in North America, that's going to be an approach where those players are going to deliver a managed service offering by pre-packaging some of this as a partially integrated solution.
Yeah, yeah, I see. I mean, I see there's a lot of debates internally within some of these, even enterprise and even some of the carriers about the whole private 5G versus wireless. And what I tell them in that it really depends on what your needs are. There's a lot of applications that require that level of latency and require that level of QoS that Wi-Fi 6 or something like that can't handle. But from a cost perspective, there's a lot of also usage for the private 5G. So I feel that it really shouldn't even be a debate, right? For that, it should be like if you have applications that need that QoS latency, then you go with that and then use the rest for the 5G. So I think it's a hot topic, and I think people should continue to
Yeah,
talk
there's
about it.
one other aspect to sort of think about in this, sort of consumption model is,
Hmm.
there's a large amount of real estate required to deliver the radio access network, and
Okay.
that's actually delivered by the tower companies.
Hmm.
So they're going to start to look at playing a role just like they have in delivering that real estate and power for the radio network. They may become a player in this sort of mid ground of
Mm.
systems integrator kind of approach in delivering some of these services or having an integrator deliver those services on as a part in partnership with them. So that could be another angle in how this gets delivered, where you can get close enough to those enterprises and not actually be on their site.
Right, right, yeah. Now, since we're talking about low latencies and stuff like that, why why are people making a big deal about autonomous cars? Like, why do we need autonomous cars? Would you say?
Well, I guess we're all kind of driving, getting to that point where we can kind of go there. But you have to actually kind of go build that highway for us to go make that happen from a network perspective. And we actually already have something here that you can get this in California. You can go down and you can rent one of these. You can actually go get your own flying car, right? Go
Count
rent
me
that.
in.
Okay,
Count me in.
go get that, right? So that way I can completely bypass the highway and the traffic and all that fun stuff, and I've just got my own kind of way to get around. So it's kind of the evolution of, I'll call it private pilots, right, who fly
Hmm.
planes to get around or helicopters to get around. Not many of us have a license for that, but it looks like we have an option for almost anybody to fly their own car. But all
Yeah.
all kidding aside, sort of the goal is to make it so that we can actually control the traffic and make the experience of driving around more efficient, and have less cars on the road, use less power.
Right.
All those kinds of things are what are driving towards the autonomous vehicles, because people are spending all this time in their vehicles, and as part of that, they want to have access to all kinds of communications and capabilities from that
Mhm.
location. And right now, it's relatively limited to sort of some mapping capabilities for navigation, sort of some access to looking up certain restaurants or things available to you on the way. It's kind of limited amount of data, and that's not really requiring low latency. That's kind of at whatever speed you need it. But if I'm
Yeah.
actually going to have a driverless car, then I've actually got to have somebody, making sure that the car's staying in its lane, isn't
Mhm.
hitting other ones, and that's when I need the high speed connection between the car and the network. And where we're seeing some work there is with different operators partnering up with the car manufacturers and
Mhm.
building test tracks to test out this capability in small areas in different parts of the world.
Yeah, no, this is great. I'm looking forward to that where we go with that because I remember being an SE in New York where the traffic used to be so bad. I used to put the newspaper on the steering wheel and be reading it. And once I got honked, I moved up 2 feet, continue reading for 10 minutes once I got honked. So looking forward to this forward. Now, this data needs to be connected to somewhere, right? In multiple areas. So this whole concept of multi-cloud edge, is it really hybrid, or is it just this lollipop silo multi-cloud connections that you see out there?
So, kind of how I see this one is that up until now, most of the, I'll call it operators, if you will, and even a lot of the enterprises, it's really, as you say, kind of that separate for this application or set of part business. It's a on-prem plus a particular public cloud. Then for another group, it's a different on-prem and a different public cloud. So kind of separate hybrid clouds, if you will. And even in those categories, there's really not been a whole lot of bursting back and forth between them, if you will, of the capabilities. And certainly not a lot of movement back and forth between hybrid cloud A and hybrid cloud B. Now we're starting to see some movement here, both by the enterprises who are already doing multi-site and multi-cloud development. We've got a couple of very large customers on the enterprise side that do this. People like British Petroleum, Lufthansa Technik, BMW. They do this now, right? So they're definitely hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. They develop and deploy their applications simultaneously across multiple countries and multiple clouds. Now, the operators are still very much siloed in their organizations, and they haven't kind of got to that, and they run them as separate businesses with different plays, and so they aren't yet looking across, but a few of them are. There's always leaders are starting to look across at being able to take all their businesses, use common platforms on their premises and with multiple clouds. And then, of course, because we're seeing some regulation coming up where they're going to have to be able to, if they get a cyber breach in a public cloud, be able to quickly move from that cloud back on prem or to a different cloud and have that capability be something they can do very quickly, which is quite frankly at the moment kind of difficult to do without a consistent platform.
Now, how do you it makes sense, but how do you solve this whole thing regarding data sovereignty and data leaks? I mean, that's an issue. How do you address that?
So in that particular one, it's kind of a very interesting kind of approach on how we solve for that one. And what I'm seeing here is that the concept of a data lake and having to have multiple copies of that data lake, both on prem and in public clouds, may not be necessary in the long term. And the way that we're going to be able to kind of handle that approach and kind of meet those kind of security guidelines and be able to kind of make an application, live in multiple places but not copy the data back and forth, is by using what we call a layer 7 connection for the application to expose it from its on-premise location that's secure to multiple different public clouds somewhere
Mhm.
else. That way I can spin up and spin down the exposure of that application a whole lot quicker as I need to and actually take care of that data sovereignty question so that I'm not
Yeah.
actually required to build massive data lakes anymore because I can now expose the data back and forth with layer 7 messaging over the top of this architecture, right? So that's how we can kind of solve for that one on top of the current architecture we have in a secure manner.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. Now, last year I mentioned earlier that I presented at this platform, this whole 5G monetization. But in talking to you last week, you were talking about the fact that we really shouldn't be using the word monetization or is being overused. Could you clarify what you meant by that there?
Yeah, so kind of what, because kind of the way I look at it originally was that we needed to do two things simultaneously was kind of the approach to get, to the next generation. So needed to build the
Hmm.
highway and then needed to build innovative applications and services and capabilities on top of that. And that's where
Hmm.
we kind of got into I'm going to monetize the network. But
I
what
got
we
it.
found is that in order to actually deliver what the end customer wants, so what he wants to do is he wants to make better quality steel or cars, improve healthcare and patient care, and he's not really all that concerned or interested in kind of what that means from a service perspective. He wants that value delivered. So we
Right.
have to sort of think about it as solving that particular business efficiency problem for that end enterprise. And by solving those and delivering that set of capabilities, that will end up providing that revenue we're looking for. But it's not a multi tenant monetization approach by saying, I'm going to bring a bunch of services available and build it, they
Right.
will come approach. Right? It's got to
Right.
be a much more targeted approach to go after these kinds of applications because there's a lot more complexity in it for each of the customers than the commonality we thought we could get out of this, right? So that's why you've got to be much more targeted in how you build that solution to solve the business problem. And that will get the revenue you're looking for, and in essence, that monetization. But you got to think of it about as very specific targeted approach.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I think that works well because if you look at in typical managed service, the most people that are successful, the ones that develop a customer personas and go after targeted messaging for the different verticals. Maybe we can close with a little bit about regarding 6G. I mean, what does 6G bring to the party? Is it just about more speeds, lower latencies? I mean, what are your thoughts on 6G there?
Yeah, so I guess we've sort of gone down that runway, if you like, of each of the different Gs has sort of had a different sort of set of capabilities that we have available to us, and we sort of went through sort of the basic voice services with 2G and maybe some early low speed IoT. Then we went through 3G. That was kind of the big broadband. We all started to get broadband on our phones at reasonably good speeds at that time. Moved on to 4G, and now we said let's combine at a IP level both the voice and the IP network, right? So now we have a consistent way to go do that, right? So we kind of moved through that world, moved through what we are now doing with 5G. It's really this whole industrial IoT, these manufacturing, oil and gas research, all those kind of things, and automation of those things in an open fashion, combined with the different types of, if you will, sort of AR VR capabilities. Now, if we move to that world of 6G, right? It's not again about faster speeds, lower latency kind of thing. Again, it's really about what I talked just a bit ago about was this application cloud AI fabric, right? So that now these applications can be delivered and deployed and exposed anywhere, on premises, at the edge, in public clouds, and that can allow us to do location sensing type functions and deliver a lot of different innovative services in conjunction with this evolved architecture that is now much more distributed with edge computing in it. So it's that combination of things that is going to be what 6G is going to bring for us.
Yeah, Ian, I think that's a great way to close this. And honestly, it's always an honor and a lot of fun having just a pure discussion with you on technology, keeping it vendor agnostic. So I appreciate you taking the time, and I'd like to thank our audience for listening in. I appreciate everyone for joining. Thank you.
All right, always a pleasure, Ray, and again, lots of fun to get together with you.
Take care, everyone. Bye bye.
All right, thanks. Bye bye.